The storm clouds had been gathering all afternoon, thick and heavy, ready to swallow the last bit of daylight when Officer Rehan Malik turned his patrol car down the deserted industrial road. It was the kind of place most people didn't dare to pass through alone. Half-collapsed warehouses, rusted metal scraps, shattered windows, and an eerie silence that felt almost unnatural. But what stopped him wasn't the emptiness. It was the sudden flicker of movement behind a fallen fence, something so small and fragile that at first he thought it was an animal searching for shelter. He stepped out of the car, his boots crunching against broken glass, and as he moved closer, his heart began to pound faster. There, curled up beneath a piece of torn plastic, was a girl no older than 8, shivering violently, her skin pale, her arms wrapped around her knees as if she were trying to hold herself together. When she slowly lifted her face and their eyes met, Rehan felt something inside him collapse. Her cheeks were sunken, her lips cracked, and her eyes carried a terror and exhaustion he had never seen before. In that moment, he did something he had never done on duty. He dropped to his knees and felt tears rise before he could stop them. If you believe kindness can change lives, and that every soul deserves a second chance, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to KindHeartsHub. Your support helps stories of hope reach more hearts. Rehan wasn't new to scenes of hardship. He had patrolled the city long enough to witness the darkest corners of human suffering, crime, poverty, abuse. But this child, sitting alone in the cold with nothing but fear in her eyes, pierced him in a way nothing else had. He gently approached, lowering his voice, though she recoiled as if expecting to be struck. Her small frame trembled at even the slightest sound, and he could see bruises on her arms, some old and faded, others fresh and dark. Her clothes were thin and torn, offering almost no protection from the biting night air. She looked as though she hadn't eaten for days. He could tell she wanted to speak, but her throat seemed too weak, her breath too shallow. When he offered her his jacket, she flinched, but after a moment, desperation overcame fear, and she reached out with trembling fingers to accept the warmth. As he wrapped the jacket around her, she leaned ever so slightly toward him, not out of trust, but out of exhaustion. Rehan lifted her carefully, feeling just how light she was, far too light for any child. It was as if she were fading from existence. He carried her to the patrol car and started the engine, turning up the heater and handing her his water bottle. She sipped slowly, coughing between each swallow, as though her body had forgotten how to accept nourishment. Rehan kept glancing at her through the rear-view mirror, trying to understand what could have led a child to such a place. The abandoned lot had no homes nearby, no hiding spots except those created through destruction and decay. Someone had left her there intentionally. Someone had walked away. At the hospital, doctors rushed her inside, and Rehan followed closely, refusing to leave her alone. As the medical team worked, he stood by the wall, gripping the brim of his cap, feeling anger and helplessness twist inside him. He had rescued countless people before, but this felt different. There was something about her, something fragile, lost, and deeply wounded, that pulled at his conscience. When the doctor finally approached him and explained that the girl had severe malnutrition, dehydration, and signs of prolonged neglect, Rehan felt his chest tighten. The doctor's voice softened as he added that she must have been fighting for her survival alone for far too long. Over the next few hours, Rehan learned her name from the nurse Amina. She barely spoke, but when she finally whispered her name, her voice cracked as if unused for months. Rehan spent his breaks sitting beside her hospital bed, offering small comforts, a blanket adjustment, a warm smile, a soft reassurance that she was safe now. Amina never asked questions, never spoke more than a word at a time, but her eyes followed him every time he entered or left the room. There was fear there still, but also a flicker of familiarity, as if in him she recognized something she had not known for a long time: protection. Days passed, and slowly Amina began to recover. The doctors noted her strength improving, yet emotionally she remained withdrawn. She startled easily, avoided sudden movements, and rarely allowed anyone but Rehan near her. He learned to speak in gentle tones, to approach from the front so she could see him coming, to give her space when she needed it. He also learned the heartbreaking truth: Amina had been abandoned by the very people who should have loved her most. Her parents had left months ago, disappearing into the chaos of the city's underbelly. Neighbors had reported seeing her alone long before that, left to fend for herself in an unsafe home. Eventually, even the home vanished when the building was demolished. She had wandered, searching for shelter, until exhaustion forced her into that abandoned lot. Rihan carried her story in his heart as if it were his own burden. Each time he imagined her wandering alone, hungry and terrified, something inside him ached. He began to visit her even when he wasn't on shift, bringing her small gifts, coloring books, warm socks, soft snacks approved by her doctor. At first, she only stared at them silently, unsure how to accept kindness. But gradually her tiny hands began reaching out, her eyes lingering on the colors, her lips pressing into something resembling a shy smile. As the bond between them grew, so did Rihan's determination to ensure she would never be abandoned again. He met with social workers, attended meetings, completed paperwork, and fought through the bureaucratic maze of the child welfare system. Amina needed a home, not just a placement, not just a temporary shelter, but a home where she could feel safe, protected, and loved. Rihan wasn't married, and his job was demanding, but every time he looked at her fragile figure curled up in that hospital bed, he knew he could not walk away from her. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the hospital window, Amina sat up in bed, holding the teddy bear he had brought her earlier. For the first time since he had found her, she leaned toward him willingly, resting her head against his arm. It was a small gesture, but it carried enormous weight. It was her silent way of saying she trusted him. In that moment, without speaking, Rihan made his decision. She would not be passed from home to home. She would not face the world alone again. If she would allow it, he would become her guardian. The process was long, filled with questions, investigations, background checks, and psychological evaluations. Some officials doubted that a single police officer could provide the stable, nurturing environment Amina needed. But Rihan never wavered. He showed up for every appointment, spoke with every counselor, provided every document they requested. His colleagues supported him, often covering shifts or helping him manage his time. Everyone who had heard about Amina's story felt moved by his dedication. The day the approval finally came, Rihan felt something lift inside him, something heavy he hadn't realized he had been carrying. He returned to the hospital with the papers in hand, his heart pounding with anticipation. When he entered the room, Amina looked up from her coloring book. Her eyes met his, and though she didn't understand the legal details, she sensed something had changed. Rihan sat beside her and gently told her she could come home with him now, that she wouldn't be alone anymore. She stared at him, her lower lip trembling, and then, in a voice small but clear, she whispered the word she had never dared to use for anyone before: home. Moving Amina into his apartment was a transformation neither of them expected. At first, she was overwhelmed. Every object, every sound, every corner felt foreign to her, but Rihan created routines, morning breakfasts, gentle wake-up calls, bedtime stories, to help her feel grounded. He placed soft nightlights in her room so darkness wouldn't scare her. He left his door slightly open so she would know he was nearby. Slowly, she began to relax, to laugh, to ask questions, and to share pieces of her story when she was ready. Healing was not a straight path. There were nights when she woke up crying, haunted by memories she didn't fully understand. There were days when she clung to him, afraid he would disappear the way her parents had. But each time she reached out, Rihan was there, steady, patient, unwavering, and day by day, the fear in her eyes dimmed, replaced by the gentle glow of security and hope. Months passed, and Amina blossomed. She gained weight, her cheeks filled out, her eyes brightened. She began to smile openly, laugh freely, and greet each day with curiosity instead of fear. Rihan enrolled her in school, where she made friends and discovered she loved drawing. He attended her school events, helped her with homework, and ensured she never doubted that she mattered. One evening, nearly a year after he had first found her in that abandoned lot, Rihan stood by the kitchen counter preparing dinner while Amina sat at the table drawing. The room was warm, filled with soft afternoon light, and the smell of food filled the air. Amina stopped drawing, looked up at him, and softly said something that made him freeze. She told him he had saved her, not just her life, but her hope. She said she didn't remember everything from before, but she remembered being alone, being scared, being hungry. And she remembered the moment she saw him kneeling in front of her, tears in his eyes. She said that was the moment she felt God had finally heard her. Rihan turned away briefly, wiping his eyes as quietly as he could. Because the truth was, she had saved him too. In helping her rebuild, he had rediscovered the compassion, purpose, and strength that had driven him to wear a badge in the first place. Together, they had rebuilt each other. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to KindHeartsHub. Your support helps bring more real, emotional stories of kindness and human connection to the world. And before we end, here is a special request. Please comment "Kindness can save lives." If you believe every child deserves love, safety, and a second chance.